Hi and welcome back. The holidays are coming and I want to show you how to do a pumpkin pie that has a nut crust, and it's gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free. I made this crust many times. The kids love it. It's got a good taste with the nuts with the pumpkin. So this is an alternative gluten-free crust that you can use. If you have nut allergies, there are other gluten-free crusts you can do. So I'm going to show you my version of my nut crust. Here I have a cup of pecans. They're not salted. They're just regular baking pecans. This takes 1.5 cups of nuts. And here I have half a cup of walnuts. Now if you don't have either, you can just make a whole walnut crust, or you can make a whole pecan crust. But I actually had them for baking for the holidays when the stores sell the walnuts and the pecans. I'm also going to add a 1/4 cup of almond flour, or they call it almond meal. And this is optional. I just think it brings it together more. And here I have 2 tablespoons of the stevia, or whatever sweetener you use to make your food sugar-free. And I'm going to run this for a while. We want the nuts to get all chopped up, actually to a fine ground. So I'm going to run this and show you how we do it. Okay, it's pretty grounded up. That's what we want. Here I have 3 tablespoons of butter. And I'm going to put that in. This is going to bring it all together and make it stick together. And we only want to run this until it forms a like a dough type consistency. Now I got to scrape down the sides. It's looking good. Oops. Perfect. Okay, now I have, let me get rid of this stuff for you. I have a deep dish pie pan. You can use a regular pie pan. It's just that I happen to have this on hand. And I've actually never used it. It's probably made for the deep dish apple pies. So what I'm going to do is put this in there. It sticks together very well. And I'm going to start spreading this out, flattening it down, and we're going to make it come to the edges of the pan. I like to use a measuring cup, flat bottom measuring cup, to press the crust down. Move it around so it can go to the edges, and you're going to have thick parts that you just kind of want to spread around to where you have thin parts. You can use your fingers too. I like to fill in the holes on the bottom. Just moving this around, I mean, you can see for yourself when you make it that you're going to have some thick parts. Then you can take some of the dough from those thick parts and move it over to the thinner parts. Now we're going to put this in the oven for 325 for about 10 minutes. Remember that this is nuts and they will burn. So you don't want to do too much more than that. We just want to set it up. Make it a little bit hard so it won't crumble as much when you go to cut it. I'm going to put this in the oven and I'll be back. I just want to show you what it looks like right now. So I'm going to put this in the oven for 10 minutes and I'll be back to show you the rest of the pie. I forgot to tell you a few things when I was doing my pie crust. The butter I used was a plant-based, it's country crock, olive oil, plant-based margarine butter. And the other thing too is if you're not sensitive to sugar, use 2 tablespoons of sugar in the crust. Kind of gives you a crunchy flavor. I just want to make sure you knew that I wasn't adding regular butter to the crust. Okay, now we're going to do the pumpkin part. I have 2 eggs that I took a fork and just broke them up and stirred them up a little bit. And I'm going to put this 3/4 of a cup of alternative sugar, which in our case is the sucrose, I don't know, stevia, whatever you want to use. And here we have 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of cinnamon, ground cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of ginger, and 1/4 cup of ground cloves. Now you can use pumpkin pie spice, but I prefer the fresh taste of the cloves and everything like that, so I prefer to do it this way. And I'm going to stir this up a little bit. Oh, and we have to put in our 1 cup of full-fat coconut milk. And we're going to use this instead of the evaporated milk that the regular pie crust or pie calls for. This is coconut milk instead of evaporated milk. And that makes it dairy-free. And I'm going to mix this up first. Now you can use a spoon to mix this. You don't need a mixer. I just prefer a mixer. And then we're going to put in a teaspoon of, we're going to put a teaspoon of vanilla. On the smaller bottles, you can just pour the vanilla into the cap and it measures out a teaspoon. But here it's got a larger cap. It's pure vanilla. I prefer that over the imitation. And we're going to add the pumpkin now. This is pure pumpkin. Don't buy the pumpkin pie mix because it's already got spices and stuff in it. And if you're adding more spices, then you don't want that. So you're going to buy pure pumpkin. And I actually bought our grocery store brand because it was cheaper. I'm using the wrong hand. I have a tendency to do that. Kind of ambidextrous. And so sometimes I'll catch myself using the wrong hand to, let's say, cut my meat or whatever. I did have a broken wrist one time, which kind of added to my agility of being able to use my other hand. Okay, I use a spatula because I can scrape it all out of the can instead of a spoon. that out later. Don't fall on me. It's kind of warm. Let me get a... Okay, our crust is done. Only 10 minutes in the oven at 325. And I'm going to dump in the filling. Again, I have my spatula so I can get every last drop. Now, if you're using a regular pie pan, you don't have to use something like I have. You're going to have the pie filling extra. You're going to have extra pie filling. And what I do is I get some ramekins. I don't put as much nut crust in it because it is too much. So what I do is save some of that. And I get ramekins and make mini pies. And in some cases I don't use the crust at all. I just use the pumpkin. And everybody's happy with that because everybody likes pumpkin with the spices and everything. Now my finishing touch. This is optional. You can sprinkle cinnamon over the top. And that would be perfectly fine. But this is a whole nutmeg. And you buy it in a container and it stays fresh because you're going to grind it fresh when you use it. And we're just going to dust it over the pie a little bit. Some people don't like nutmeg. I do. Okay. Now we're going to put this in the oven for at 425 for 15 minutes. Now with any other pumpkin pie you make, you're going to cut the heat down after 15 minutes and you're going to cut it down to 350. Then you're going to let it cook for 40 to 50 minutes, almost an hour. And when the inside is not, when you shake the pie pan and it's not jiggly anymore, that means it's done. And also when you're cooking it and you think it's almost done, you can take a knife and stick it in the middle. If it comes out with pumpkin pie batter on it, it's not done. So it needs to come out clean. You're actually making a custard with this. Another thing is I put it on a cookie sheet that has foil on it because it may spill over. It might bubble over, so protect your oven. And we'll be back to show you the final. Okay, we're back. We took it out of the oven at 40 minutes. That's why I started checking at 40 because it's set up really well. And I checked it with a knife, a butter knife, and it came out clean. No batter. So then you gotta let it cool down for 2 hours after that. And which killed us because we were smelling this all day. Anyway, let me give you some helpful tips on this recipe. What I did is I wrote down a couple things that I wanted to tell you. First of all, I was supposed to put a teaspoon of cinnamon in the crust. I didn't do it. It didn't matter because I've tasted some crumbs and I didn't miss the cinnamon. Second of all, you can make mini pumpkin pies by using your muffin pan and putting a cupcake liner down in there and just put some crust down in there, press it down, and then put the pumpkin in there so you can make small ones for a party. Hopefully you try this. Hopefully this was help. If you have any questions about this recipe or any questions at all, please leave it in the comments or email me at mynanasapron@gmail.com. See you next time. Bye.